So I just want to welcome people to our final webinar. We're running our We Lead for Legacy programme, and as part of the additional support, wider connections and further inspiration, we've been looking at public appointments that are out there that people could be applying for, and just thinking about how to progress and influence and make change in different ways as leaders. And so today is the final one in the series for now, all about becoming a school governor. So I'm really excited. This is one of the hot topics that's really got my juices flowing. And so I will be watching from afar on this one. I'm going to hand over to LaToya, who's LaToya Robinson is one of the participants on the We Lead for Legacy programme, who's going to chair the session today. And we've got members of our team on the panel, other people that we know out in the wider world who are school governors, and sort of strategic as well in the way some of this stuff happens, to really give you a broad flavour of what's going on. So can't wait to hear more, and we'll hand over to LaToya.
Hello.
Well, I'll hand over to Ayisatu first.
Oh, Lordy. Right. So we're just going to get our wonderful presentation up. And nope, that's not how that works.
Just find it for you in the screen share.
Yeah. Wonderful.
It's right. Showing now. So yeah, we'll see you soon.
Right. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been so wonderful. The conversations have been so rich in this Building Legacy series. And I'm not going to talk so much today, actually, because we have LaToya Robinson, as introduced by Nicola, chairing our conversations today. And as by way of introduction, LaToya Robinson is a dedicated parent to 2 primary and secondary school-age children. She is also a passionate advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in Greater Manchester, with a particular focus on advancing the representation and progression of Black individuals in the legal profession. With over 2 decades of experience as a civil litigation lawyer, she has merged her expertise with a passion for social impact to drive positive change through corporate social responsibility. She's currently the UK Pro Bono and Social Impact Advisor at a global law firm, and recently graduated from the We Lead for Legacy Civic Leadership Program. So welcome, 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 LaToya. How are you feeling?
Feeling fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Yeah, this is a panel discussion that I've been looking forward to. I personally would like to, I'm an aspiring school governor, so you know, I would like to at some point be on the governing body for hopefully one of my 2 children's schools, but if not, then a local primary school in my area. And it's a really great way for people to expand on and develop their skills, I think, you know, regardless of whether or not you're a parent. So really looking forward to today's discussion. So the order of the service will be, we'll start the panel discussion shortly until around about 1 o'clock. Then we'll have a Q&A section for if anyone else does join us, then we can ask if they have any questions. I may have some questions for the panelists myself, and then we'll close around about 1:15, 1:30. So to introduce our lovely 3 panelists, and thank you all for taking your time to be with us this afternoon. So we'll start off with Paula Watt. So Paula became a school governor for a specialist primary school in Manchester in 2022 and has taken additional responsibilities as the lead for behaviour and attendance. She's also a youth mentor, mentoring young people who are at risk of becoming not in education, employment or training, also known as NEET, and is working on projects to improve the outcomes for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and those from undeserved backgrounds. So you've got a good wealth of experience there, Paula. Lovely to have you with us. Moving on to Paul Costello. So after 30 years for various law enforcement agencies in the UK, Paul began lecturing mathematics at Wigan and Lee College and for the HM Prison Service. And Paul is also a fellow of the School of Social Entrepreneurs. He became a local authority governor for Wigan in 2014 at a local primary school and is now the vice chair of governors at that school. So you've got a lot of sort of board level experience already, Paul. Great to have you with us. And last but not least, Ayisatu. So Ayisatu is a British Yoruba founder, providing spaces for women to gather, learn, connect, and build up their confidence, health, and well-being however they like. Her work out of Idaria Life CIC focuses on cross-cultural peer learning and support spaces centered around the outdoors, mindfulness, and handcraft skills. She has served as a community governor in Rochdale, and it looks like most recently a parent governor in Wigan. So very much looking forward to hearing from you and your experiences, Ayisatu. So let's move on. So Paula, I am going to start with you. Can I ask you, so how did you get into becoming a school governor?
Well, I'll take you back to the beginning as to why I actually did it. I worked for a city council as an education caseworker. So that role involved me going into schools, different provisions, working with young people, children who are at risk of permanent exclusion. So I've always had that interest in education. And in 2020, that role was disestablished. And I felt that I needed to still have sort of a way into the schools because that was my passion, specifically around special educational needs. So at that point, Manchester were recruiting for school governors. So I put the application in for a school governor. I was successful. And you have to wait until the opportunity to be a school governor comes up. So my preference was for a school in North Manchester, a secondary school in North Manchester. But it took I was on the waiting list for about a year before I actually got into school. And then they came to me and said, oh, we've got availability, we've got a vacancy in a specialist primary school in South Manchester. So it was completely the opposite to what I really wanted anyway. But I took up the role because, as I said, special educational needs is definitely my passion. And so that's when I took up the role there in the special school. So yeah, in 2022. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Right. Interesting. It's an interesting route. Thank you. Ayisatu, I'll come on to you. How did you get into becoming a school governor?
So I started offering family holiday clubs when I lived in Castleton in Rochdale, just like a thing to do crafts in our local church space. And with us doing crafts in our local church space, I got quite involved with the local community school, which was literally just like 2 minutes in that direction to my place. And they had an opportunity for a community governor. And I really, in my brain, back then, I would have been about, I think I was 21 when this happened. And in my brain, a governor was always the head of like a state back from my brain in like Nigeria. So I had no notion that a governor was literally just someone who helped govern things, and it didn't have to be like an actual political standing in that sort of way. So they offered training, they offered a lot of sort of like experience and generosity. But as I was someone who lived in a local area and I had volunteered my time to do things in the local area because I was a member of that local church at that time, they saw me as someone who would bring that value to that space. So I was invited to apply. It was a thing where a couple of people, you know, like applied and then you get voted for. I don't think a lot of people realize that as well. But because of how challenging I think being a school governor can be sometimes, a lot of people don't apply. So it's almost guaranteed, depending on where you live, that if you so much as show an interest in becoming a school governor, you'll find a slot to do that kind of work. So that's how I started as a community governor, just representing the views of the local community on the board for that school. And then more recently, I was the parent governor at my son's school, which was also a Church of England school. And that literally came out from during the pandemic. And I had a lot of challenges to come up around racial equity. And I felt like I wasn't really getting heard. And one of the other parents who was on the board sort of mentioned me in the space because they were actually desperate. I think a lot of people also don't realize that schools do have quotas and requirements to have school governors. And so they didn't actually have enough parent governors, they needed two. And so I was sort of like put forward for it. And even though, again, it was put out to vote, nobody else had applied. So I got it. So yeah, I got to be a parent governor and again express things that were relevant to me as a parent. And it was interesting to see the difference in the dynamic with the board because of what I was representing as opposed to my earlier experience.
Thank you. And it's interesting that you mentioned what your initial understanding of a governor was. So I think it's great to have these sorts of conversations to help demystify what an actual school governor is. And a lot of people think, oh, okay, I thought it was something else. So yeah, I'm sure that's an experience for maybe some others on the call. Paul, how about yourself?
I think, mine came through a sporting side of things, but I was involved with a swimming club, and it was and the pool was good because of the austerity cuts had been shut. And I got together, we saved the pool, and then these schools started to come in, and there was a new organisation involving 12 primary schools, and they were going out involving all the children in different kinds of sports, so trying every kind of different sport, very inclusive and very exactly what I like to see. So it wasn't all the top child that they got all the medals. They were being inclusive in various sports, different levels, so everybody had a chance of being involved. So, and then what happened was, I had two people said to me, you fancy being a governor at the school? And I said, well, it's a Church of England school. I'm not Church of England. So I said, I'm not. I have a religion, but I'm not, I'm just me. So you just get what you get. So so then he said, well, you can go. I didn't know, like a lot of it. I have no idea. I have no intention being a governor, never thought about it. And then he said, oh, well, you can become a local authority governor. Well, I said, well, what does that involve? I mean, so then that involved going to be interviewed in Wigan, really, and you get interviewed. And really, I think you can go to any school, but I just went to the school that approached me. And it was just because I liked the school ethos of being inclusive, and it followed and they wanted to get into the community, get involved with the community in loads of different ways, because I'm involved with the community on different. I run a cinema and different things in the community. So to me, it was like they were kind of it was my kind of fit. So I've never been a parent governor. The kids didn't go to the school, but I think I brought a lot of independent view to it because I wasn't involved in the school. And then as I agree, I'm now vice chair of governors, which it's been a 10-year journey, but very exciting and very interesting journey.
Yeah, sounds it very, very. Yeah, well done with all the things that you do, and it sounds like very much a natural progression given what you do in the community. Wonderful. If I can stay with you then, Paul. So what have been the highlights for you in your role at the moment?
I think it's like, I go into school and you have to understand what your role is. So at the end of the day, you get given certain responsibilities, which hopefully you pick what you like to do. So I like a bit of maths, so I give an overview on the maths side of it every year, which I enjoy. So I'll go into classes and do a little bit. I don't involve with the teaching. I just go and tell the management behaviour skills and stuff like that. And then the school I'm involved with, they're doing like a lot outward bound, so I go on outward bound courses, and so it reduces their cost goes a free bit, but it kind of like makes it, and you get to see the children, and then also I can bring into the school my other little passion, which is I do a project called Lend with Care, where we invest into third world countries and entrepreneurs in third world countries. So I brought that into the school, and then they so it's kind of get inclusive. So it's been, that's the best thing, is that I've been able to come in and they let me do things. But it took a while. You can't just do that straight away. You're in a different. You've just got to take your time and work your way to make sure you understand not the politics, how the system works really. It's not, you can't just sit in and say. You have to see how different people engage with the board.
Great, thank you. Paul, I'll come over to you. What have been your highlights in the role so far?
I'd say my highlights is definitely going into the school and seeing the children. The school that I govern is a very diverse school. And at one point, the governing the children, and these are children with additional needs, and some with really complex needs. So how can the school meet those needs for more diversity that's going on? So within the governing body, she's back.
Right, so I think I've been able to, okay,
continue. Yeah, so just see, because I have the opportunity to go into school a few times to meet the and just see what a school day for them is like. And I actually spent a whole day in school. So I think those opportunities are really important, because sometimes we come in as a governor, we come in like once or twice, probably about 5 meetings a year, and we don't actually see how the school runs on a day-to-day basis, and we don't get to speak to the teachers, but we've had that opportunity. We've also had the opportunity to attend training sessions with some of the teachers, so they get to know you and you get to know them. So I think that's one of the highlights. One thing we did a fundraising event. We did a 24-hour sledge-a-thon. So basically we pushed this thing up and down in the gym for 24 hours. So we were able to be part of that as governors, and it just shows our commitment to supporting the school in whatever way we can. So yeah, there's a lot of highlight moments. So there's some of them.
Yeah, they're really interesting. Sledge-a-thon sounds good. Yeah, not sure how I would feel about that.
Grueling's more, but I only did an hour. I think that was enough for me.
I think. Yeah, I think just to pick up on what you said, I think it is very important for someone in this role to be able to build relationships with, the teachers, and if possible, parents as well. If you're representing a school and you want to sort of make sure that you can act in school's best interest, and you need to know the people that, who are going to be benefiting from it. So it's good that you've had the opportunity to do that. I'll come over to you, Ayisatu. What have been the the highlights for you in the role?
I think a major highlight for me was being part of the interview process for a teacher. Like they had an internal role come about, and to be on the panel and being able to not just simply be present and watch the interview taking place, but be part of the panel interviewing the teachers who were going to be providing supported services to like my children was quite a powerful thing to be able to do. And I was able to raise my own personal concerns outside of just the standard sort of interview questions that you would need. So I think being able to be in that privileged position was a really, really massive highlight, because we had to make a decision as a board as to who we were going to recommend to take on that role, and to just be in that space where the teachers, obviously they're interviewing for a job that they really want, and they're quite vulnerable in that space, especially like the fact that they may or may not be the current teacher of your child, but they also have to be open and honest with you in a particular way as part of this interview. It was something that I really recognized as a privileged position to be in, and to have that sort of influence, to have that sort of power in a certain space. For me, as a woman, as a migrant to the Wigan area, not necessarily, I'm not a local lass to the area at all. It's something that was very it was a curious experience at the very least, and it really exposed me to the working behind how the spaces get set up, how schools get organized. And even though this may seem like really like passe, the actual meetings themselves, whenever I could make it to them, because there's so many meetings, but the actual meetings themselves for me were absolute highlights, because to see the amount of work that goes into managing a school with even just like 200 kids, and knowing that there are other schools that manage like 500 kids, and seeing the request and the pressure that's being put on the teachers to organize or save money or manage budgets, while they're also trying to provide these holistic support to parents who are going through a hard time, and to be in those meetings and see how it's not just a tick box exercise. At least at the school that I was, it wasn't just a tick box of going, oh, we've gone to this class and we can say we've done this percentage to that percentage. We were able to really delve deep and be able to challenge and be able to go, have you considered these equipments? Have you considered this process? Or even suggest things that people can engage in. So I think for me, like just really, really seeing and being able to comprehend how it is that the education system here works, and how it can be influenced, and how things can be changed. It just felt like a little privy peephole that I was like, oh my God, I understand so many things now, kind of thing. It's still very complex, but yeah, I think that's been the highlight, just to be able to be in that position.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of type of privileged position to be in, you know, to be sort of on the other side of the school gates and get a real understanding for the sorts of things that schools go through, the pressures, as you say, the requests. So yeah, I think that's another sort of good reason why people should apply to be in these sorts of roles, just to get a really good understanding of what schools go through and what actually happens. Because, you know, as parents, we just think, well, sometimes I kind of think, you know, send my kids to school and, you know, everything will be all fairy and la-di-da, but there's quite a lot going on in the background. So yeah, thanks. Okay, Paul, come over to you. What have you found challenging as a school governor?
I think it's the amount of paperwork. It's like let's destroy a forest. But in any case, I think it's a case of they have their own language in education, which is you've got to challenge and say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You know, I think and if you don't come from an educational background, you have to challenge, because they talk in a different, like I said, different language, but that's quite challenging. There's quite I think there's quite a lot of responsibility, really, like we were saying about being on interview panels, because you're making a decision, because you're part of the process of appointing people, and you want to appoint the best person for the children in the school. And I think it's quite a lot of responsibility, but that's good for your own skill development, because it's making you think out of the box, and it makes you prepared. We don't have as many meetings. You have as many meetings as you want, because there's different kinds of meetings, but like with the clerk, so they run a lot of things essentially in advance. I think the challenge is finding time to read everything before you get to the meeting. So prepare yourself for that. And also I think it's good that you read it, because sometimes, as someone said, like they produce a lot of information, and then a headmaster sometimes he likes to be challenged because he knows you read it. So he's prepared his documentation. So yeah, I think the challenge is managing that side of it, and also no question's a silly question. You've got to be able to say, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah. I mean, they all sound like challenges which sort of once you overcome them, you'll find it a very rewarding experience. And as you say, it's all sort of part of a very much self-development process as well to gain, those really good skills. Paula, how about you? Anything that you found challenging in the role?
I agree with Paul. The amount of paperwork you have to get through is just madness, and the different policies and procedures that you have to read and sign off, and you don't want to sign things off and not get it right. So I feel that is a challenge, and you do feel like you've got the responsibility of the school on your shoulders, but not just the school. It's about, the main thing is the children and families that are in that school, and specifically being a governor of a special school, you've got that additional challenge of making sure that specifically those with complex needs, to make sure you don't actually deal with the day-to-day running, but you want to make sure that the policies and procedures are in place, governed properly, to make sure that the children and young people that are served do you know what I mean? That you want to try and make sure that the teachers are aware of processes, and things can be put in place, and because we get fed back on the very complex cases where there's like safeguarding, and if there's anything to do with like social care or whatever, so we get fed back on those things. And it's for us that I find that challenging, because you just want to, you feel that you don't deal with the day-to-day, but then you kind of think, oh, I could do this or I could do that, but that's not for you to do. You've kind of got to say, well, okay, challenge the head teacher. What did you do? Instead response. I think also what's been challenging is having Ofsted come in, and so we had someone in to do a quarterly report, a review of how the school is doing, and having to speak to them. And because it was the first time that I did it, so I'm just like, well, what am I supposed to say? I'm going to be able to do it, because it was just me and another governor who hasn't been doing the job very long. So we were like, because this was around the head teacher's performance, so it was like, that was a bit of a challenge, because we didn't want to get it wrong. But it went well, and we were instructed and supported through it. I think also my initial challenge was being the only Black woman on the governing body at that point when I first started. So I thought I started the job role and I was like, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to watch what happens, because a lot of the terminology I don't understand. I stand out like a sore thumb because I'm the only person that looks like me here. Will anyone listen to me? So those type of things went through my head. But I was part of the civic leadership program, the very first one. And they were talking a lot about being empowered. And so from doing that, then I thought, no, I've been given this position. I was interviewed and I was successful in getting it. So I need to bring my whole self to that position. I need to speak up. If I see something that isn't right, then I need to call it out. So I was involved in a meeting where a disciplinary, and I was able. That was the first time I did it, but following on from that, I will always put myself forward for doing things I haven't done before and challenging myself, because that's the only way I'm going to grow within the role. So I'm on the finance committee. I don't know much about finance, but I was able to learn it as time's gone on. So I think it's about, although things are challenging, you have to put yourself forward and put yourself in those positions. So how are you going to learn if you don't actually do and put yourself there? So that's kind of, there's been a lot of challenges with the role, but I haven't shied away. Initially I was going to shy away, but I haven't shied away from taking on different responsibilities within the governing body's role. And I think it's definitely paid off, and I've learned so much over time. So yeah.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you've not shied off, from doing things. There will be those of us who think we might not have certain skills or experience to become a governor, but you don't have to have much. You don't have to have particular skills in HR or finance necessarily. It's great if you do, but I think it's, like you say, about sort of challenging and learning as you go along. And I can only imagine the sort of additional responsibilities and challenges that you have being a governor in an SEND school. So yeah, well done to you for sort of doing the amazing work that I'm sure you do with the school. And you picked up there on sort of being at the time, the only governor that looked like yourself. So I'll come back in the role, if you've experienced any challenges you want to share with us.
So for me, I was often the only person of the African diaspora in these sort of like spaces, even when we went to like the training sessions and whatnot. But I lived in Castleton, and like my most recent time, I'm living in Wigan. So they're not necessarily places that are typically diverse anyway. So I wasn't expecting to meet loads of people that looks like me in these spaces. But I think one of the main challenges, which is attached to racial inequity, was seeing just how unaware and just simply how unaware and how, I don't want to say ignorant, but possibly negligent, the people who were teaching in spaces were when it came to topics of gendered inequity, or especially racial inequity as well. For example, I remember raising like, oh, it's Black History Month, like, what are you doing for Black History Month? And one of the staff members who had been like in education for over 2 decades was like, oh, what is Black History Month? And to me, yes, I understand that we're living in Wigan. I completely get that. But to work in education in a nation like the United Kingdom and not to even have a notion of what Black History Month was just mind-blowing to me. So seeing those kind of levels of like limited awareness in spaces like that, where people, and the teachers that I'm talking about are absolutely outstanding human beings. Like, they're dedicated educators. They're really committed to the kids. They care. And I can hand on heart say that they're good people. But to not see how that could be affecting the kids that end up in the space was something that, trying to use sort of like radical but nurturing ways of communicating the gravity of erasure, like the gravity that erasure can have on kids, and raising those kind of challenges was hard in that space as a parent governor, because my kids go to the school, as opposed to when I was a community governor, or, you know, like you're a local government governor or anything like that. My kids go to this school, and I'm wanting my kids to be safe. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm living in Wigan, which is a majority white like area. And I'm aware of the fact that in a school of about 200 kids, for the past 5 years, there was one family of about 4 kids of mixed heritage. And so, and they're all from the same family, right? And that was like their diversity, sort of like, and that's not on them, you know, if the people aren't there, the people aren't there. But by the time my son had been in the school for about 3 years or so, they had now, like, it started to grow, and we had a cohort of maybe about 20 kids who were of non-white origin in the school. And to see that interactions hadn't necessarily changed in the school was quite tough. It was quite tough initially, but then we got to the point where I was brave enough to just go, you know what? It is Black History Month, so I'm going to send my daughter into school in Ashoki, and I'm going to give her some books about racial inequity, and we're just going to go in. We're going to go in, and I recognize that as part of my privilege of being a governor, I was willing and able to do that. And my child went in, and they got to have conversations, and they got to read these books, and they got to be engaged with it. So I think seeing the reflection of society in the boardroom was really hard, is what I would say was the main challenge in that way. Because then trying to be practical and supportive of the school and the establishment, while also while also sort of holding space for my needs as a woman of the African diaspora in the space that needs to be cared for myself, but also have children that I'm entrusting with these people, and the way that they're thinking and the way they see things. That was something that, and we're still navigating that now, but it's something that I had to be very conscious of. And I think the other challenge that I want to highlight is just making it to the ruddy meetings as a parent was so hard, because they put the meetings out of school hours, because obviously they're working during the school hours, and I'm working during the school hours because my kids are being taken care of during the school hours. So out of school hours is when I need to do stuff, but that's the only time that they're available. And it just became this nightmarish thing where I would read the papers and I'll just have to send feedback, but I couldn't make it to a meeting, or I'll be taking a meeting while I'm taking a child to gymnastics or swimming. So like accommodating that, like, I think it's really important to be aware of why it is that one is in any of these spaces, and why we take on these civic roles, and what it is that we want to achieve, and sort of just find ways to make it work. But it was really disheartening for me not to be able to make it to these meetings, especially like when I became a lone mother, and not being able to be as actively engaged with the work was quite tough. But I guess that's a universal problem with a lot of things.
Mhm. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all of that with us. I'm glad that you felt confident enough to sort of bring your authentic self to the role and not feel afraid, to speak up on things and to do things for Black History Month where and when you feel necessary. It's interesting but not surprising to hear that in this day and age people still don't know what Black History Month is, or that it existed. But we are where we are. We can only do as much as we can to raise awareness and celebrate that month, and celebrate it all year round as well. So this leads very nicely on to my next question, and I will give you a breather, Ayisatu. I'll come on to you, Paul. What are your thoughts on why more people from racially minoritized communities should consider becoming a school governor?
I think she just answered it. I think the question is that a lot of the schools are very in their own bubbles, and you need to get them out of the bubbles to understand what's out there. So I'm involved with Wigan at an organisation called Everything Human Rights, and I brought them in. I had a connection, so I brought them into because I knew that Farai from the organisation. I brought them into the school to do these kind of sessions. But sometimes I don't think they know where to go. And I think the teachers, but the competent teachers, but they're not confident as community leaders. So they do struggle with that side of it. And like in the cinema, we always have Black History Month. And we always do. So it's quite upset. I mean, I'm an aging white male. Like, I think it's shocking that we still don't recognise Black History Month in schools. And I think it's very brave that you bring it up, and I think it should be done all the time. So I think the school. See, I'm at St George's in Tilsley, and our diversity has gone changed with people from Hong Kong, Zimbabwe, from all over the different asylum seekers. So it's the school's changing. So I think the board needs to change, and the board needs. I've always said the board needs to reflect the community. But it's giving the community the confidence to come on the board, right? So we always struggle with pair governors at our school, and really that's what we need to do. Go to parents and say, come on board, reflect our school, and then you're not on your own. You should have somebody with a peer mentor that so you can walk through it, because it is a challenge for you. And like, yeah, I mean, I get a bit shocked when we don't recognise Black History Month after all these. Quite upsetting, really, but any case, I think that's what we should do. I think the school should reflect the community, and that's easier said than done. But we have to do that because there's a wonderful. I mean, that's what made United Kingdom great, was to be engaged with everybody and be inclusive. And I think sometimes some of the rhetoric's not like that anymore, and that's upsetting as well. So I would think it's like, let's be inclusive, let's bring people in, and let's reflect on who we are as a school.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Paul, massively. Thank you. How about you, Paula? What are your thoughts?
It's important to have a diverse governing bodies. As Paul said, is that you need to reflect the community that's within the school. I'm just like, how can you make decisions to benefit the children and young people that you're serving if you haven't got diverse thoughts and experiences of people on the board? And not only about having different experiences and thoughts, it's about these children, young people coming up. The phrase gets used over and over again, is that you can't be what you can't see. And our young people need to see that there are people who look like them in governing, in that kind of role, so they too can aspire to say, oh yeah, I might one day be a governor of a school. So if we need to inspire our young people, and we can't do that if we're not sitting in these civic leadership roles. And I think also, like I said, with the diverse thoughts and experiences, specifically in certain schools, it's time to do things differently. If we have the same people sitting on these boards doing the same things over and over again, we're not going to be able to address the needs of our children and young people. And I think, like with Black History Month, we don't teach Black history in our curriculum. We don't recognise that there's other celebrations than Christmas. And if we're not having people on the boards who saying, look, and challenging that, why are we not celebrating other festivals? Because we've got children who are Sikh or who are Muslim. Why are we not celebrating these other things? So it's important for us to be on the boards to challenge that. And to make our children, young people, feel more inclusive, feel that the culture's there, our teachers understand our culture, because there's people sat on the board who can, direct them. And it's like this thing. I just think if we don't diversify, we're just going to be doing the same things over and over again, and we'll have that institutional racism that will continue on if we don't address it by diversifying our governing bodies.
Yeah, absolutely, Paula, thank you. And yeah, you touched on inspiring others as well. I think we have to remember that in everything that we do, we are either, intentionally or unintentionally inspiring the next generation. So it's important to put ourselves in these types of roles to show the next generation that if we can do it, they can do it as well. And the book doesn't sort of just stop with us. Perfect. So Ayisatu, I know you kind of answered this question, but if you have anything more that you want to add as well to the wonderful response you gave to the last question.
I think more than anything else, due to our histories, due to our heritage, due to just being individuals, we all bring different energy into spaces. And I don't necessarily mean that in the mystical way of energy being flowing through the world, but literally we come through with different energy in our different experiences. And it's hard work managing things like the school. It's hard work being community leaders. And so I feel like ultimately it benefits the organizations such as schools and these boards to be diverse because people will come with different ways of thinking that you don't have to force your way to think like. People see things in a different way that you don't have to, because to try and be considerate of the needs of so many people, of so many different needs, of so many different opportunities, to try and do that is frustrating. And I can see why, systemic issues persist, because even for the people who want to do better, it's like trying to do things that are not within your wheelhouse, they're not within your skill set. So I feel like it's like a fundamental need of civic leadership in general, but even specifically in school governorships, like to have people who think differently, so you don't have to think of, oh, how can we make sure we're supporting all the refugee kids who have come into this area in this particular time. If you have someone who is a refugee on your board, you don't have to think about how you have to support them. You can just ask the people directly. And because they were invested in the board, because they care, they feel respected, they feel that privilege, they feel that power, you feel that authority, that influence, then yes, you will also be like, actually, as the school governor person who is able to represent this group, I think this, and you can go back to where you're coming from. You can go back to your community and you can have that interaction. And I feel as though it's an absolute own goal for systemic problems to carry on having the same cohort of people trying to do this work, sitting on boards for years and years and years. Like, the children are only ever in school for 5 years. So it just doesn't make sense that with new technology, new sets of people, new sets of things, new experience in the world is literally changing around us, that the same people are there, regardless of how open-minded they are, regardless of how considerate and how patient and wonderful they are still who they are. And yeah, I feel like we need to be in those spaces in all our different versions of what we can be, so that the stuff that we need to do just gets done. Like, people are tired of being frustrated and suffering and having like just injustice all the time. And it's just, I feel like it's an easy thing to do. It's not the simplest thing, but I feel like it's an easy thing to do to help the world like just be better for us. But yeah, that's why. So apply.